welcome to CEC-UGC lecture. In continuation with the series on religion and society, in today's lecture we are going to discuss a chapter from G.S. Fuller's book, The Camphor Flame. Now let us remind ourselves that this is from the syllabus of Religion and Society, a paper taught to BA disciplinary course, second semester. And in the series we have been following the syllabus, so we are doing unit 1 of the syllabus, where we are trying to understand the sociological perspective on religion. So in previous lectures we have talked about Durkheim, we have talked on Andre Bethe, Peter Berger and Max Weber, and in today's lecture we will understand how Fuller kind of talks about these rituals of pilgrimage, which is very central to understanding religion. So this is chapter 9 of the book in G.S. Fuller, and the seminal work, The Camphor Flame, Popular Hinduism and Society in India, published in 1992, anthropologist G.S. Fuller provides a comprehensive study of popular Hinduism, the religion as it actually lived and practiced by ordinary people, rather than the idealized version found in ancient Sanskrit text. So, most of the time when we think about Hinduism as a religion, we go back to the religious text of the epics and the Manusmriti and the mythologies written, and we try to understand the tenets of Hinduism. Fuller, on the other hand, kind of not restricts himself to this religious text, but tries to do an empirical study of how people have lived their religion, and in that context he talks about how pilgrimage is central to every Hindu. The title itself is a metaphor. The camphor flame is used in an arti, the rituals, because it burns brightly and leaves no residue, symbolizing the total consumption of the self in the presence of the divine and the oneness shared between the deity and the devotee. In chapter 10 of The Camphor Flame, C.J. Fuller shifts his focus from internal rituals of the temple to the outward movement of the devotee. So much of Hinduism again is restricted to what are the activities or the ways in which we visualize the temple as the place of worship. Fuller is kind of taking us away from the description of a temple and the place of worship to the everyday life of people who believe in Hinduism, and therefore explores pilgrimage not just an religious act but as a social phenomena that defines the geography of Hinduism. So much of the time when we the Hindus goes on a pilgrimage, it's not only kind of visiting a religious place, but it also creates a social milieu of interaction between people from different class, different caste, and also from different gender. That is why Fuller is emphasizing on the fact that it is not just religion that we talk about, it is all the social phenomena the focus is going to be. So in Hinduism, a pilgrimage center is called a tirth, literally translates to a ford or a crossing place. A tirth can be a river. In Hinduism, we see the Gangas, the mountain, which is the Kailas, or a city, where we have a number of cities which are considered as places of worship. The most prominent ones is Banaras or Varanasi, or even a living saint. So if we'll go into the meaning of what is a tirth in Hinduism, it is a junction where the divine world, that is the Vaikunt or the Kailas, touches the human body. Fuller leans on the etymology of the word tirth, which means a crossing place. It is a point where the boundary between the mundane world and the divine becomes thin, allowing the devotee to cross over to a higher state of consciousness or accumulate merit or punya. So basically it is kind of a transition from a state of profane to a place which is visualized or which has a meaning of being sacred. So you overcome your everyday mundane life and create a sacredness by visiting these places, and that is why it is considered as a distancing away the divide between the profane and the sacred. The tirth is a physical journey across landscape of India. The goal is to achieve darshan, that is beholding the deity, and to accumulate punya, which is the spiritual merit, while washing away pap, which is sin or demerit. Now these concepts like darshan, punya or pap are all mentioned in the religious text. So the beauty of the book is that Fuller is kind of not only discussing the everyday mundane life in which people make sense of religion, but is also going back to the essential uh, terms and concepts which are core in terms of understanding Hinduism as a religion. So, if we look into the way in which there is a geographical landscape of pilgrimage, he tells us that there is an all India or a pan Hindu category where shrines known to all Hindus regardless of region. And if we go back to Srinivas, he told us that Hinduism is all a pan India phenomena, as well as it is also practiced at the regional level and local. So, there are different versions. So, when we look into pilgrimage as an all India phenomena, then we know about shrines which are kind of very common to all Hindus, and a visit to these sacred places are kind of considered important in one's life. For example, Banaras, Puri, Haridwar. Then we also have a regional dimension where certain centers are significant for specific language or state, and here then we see that there is a regional variation in which only the much of the people from that particular state have a belief or faith in it. And here in this work, The Camphor Flame, Fuller makes reference to Pandharpur, which is in Maharashtra, and Guryavur, which is in Kerala. Then the third level of the category of pilgrimages are the local or village level, where small shrines are significant to a specific clan or district. And here the example are given from the village deity, which is the Gram Devta. So, he will then go into kind of making helps us traverse through the important major pilgrimage circuits which are kind of considered as very significant. So, there are thousands of local shrines, several major circuits draw millions of pilgrims annual, and these circuits are kind of connoted with different terms in Hinduism. The first is the Char Dham, which is significance is that it is the four corners of India, and the key locations are Badrinath, Dwarka, Puri and Rameshwar. And then the second circuit is the Saptapuri, which is the 7 holy cities, where these are the 7 cities which are considered as important for pilgrimage, and these again there are a lot of kind of overlap between the Char Dham and the Saptapuri, because these cities are included in this. So, we have Varanasi, Haridwar, Ayodhya, Mathura, Kanchi, Ujjain and Dwarka. The third category of the major pilgrimage circuit is the Shakti Peeth, which are the sites of the goddess, and there is a mythology associated with each of these Shakti Peeths, and it has been passed down from generation to generation, which actually says why the particular sacred space originated or why the people are worshipping the space. And the important Shakti Peeths are Kamakhya, Kalighat, Vaishno Devi, and there are many other which has not been included in this text. Now, the idea is that we are not just sticking to a description of the pilgrimage, but it has also been connected to the process of globalization and expansion of the tourism as well. So, the religious sites have actually over the years expanded because of the coming in of modernity and the global phenomena. And here in this text, he refers to M.N. Srinivas. M.N. Srinivas did his study in the Rampur village in Karnataka. His book is The Religion Among the Kurks of Mysore. And in this work, Srinivas has done an ethnographic study of trying to understand the relation between Hinduism and the social organization or the social structure. According to Srinivas, the modern era changed the stakes of the journey through 3 main drivers. And what are these main drivers? The number one is infrastructure and safety. So, in the 19th century, pilgrims faced bandit disease, cholera was a constant threat, and treacherous terrain. After these expansion of the railways where communication becomes easier, and later the national highway system turned a multi-month trek into a few days journey. So, that kind of increased the number of pilgrims because now we have proper roadways, railways, and even the lot of connection between the places of worship to the airport, railway stations, and therefore the ease of traveling kind of also increases the number of visitors. The second phenomena for the expansion of pilgrimage is the rise of the middle class. and this class has increased disposable income and the desire for spiritual merit have made pilgrimage a standard vacation or retirement activity for millions. So it has kind of become a part of their lifestyle, whenever they have time and whenever there is a holiday, people make a kind of a quick visit to these places, sacred places, both as a ritual act as well as a time to spend, as a period when they could spend time with friends and relatives. The third factor for the expansion of pilgrimage is mass communication. Modern media, religious television channels, and social media have made distant shrines like Kedarnath or Sabrimala household names, even in the remote villages that Srinivas studied. So now that we have these YouTube channels and Instagrams and Facebook where people share the post of their visit to certain places, and then this place becomes familiar to others, and therefore it kind of becomes more visible, and a larger number then starts kind of planning the same trip. Now, when we look into these three factors, that is the growth of telecommunications as well as media and the emergence of middle class, we try to focus majorly on the role of communication in pilgrimage. The primary factor behind the massive expansion of pilgrimage in the modern era is the improvement in communication, which made long distance travel both quicker and more affordable. So, the introduction of the Indian Railway was a pivotal movement, though it was initially made with hesitations. In the 1840s, the East India Company's directors doubted railway would work in India. They feared that strict caste purity rules would prevent Hindus from sharing train carriage with others. This concern was dismissed by J.C. Marsman, who confirmed with traditional Hindu association in Bengal that travelling by rail would not result in a loss of pilgrimage merit. So the growth was not just organic but actively encouraged by infrastructure providers. In the late 20th century, road travel saw a similar surge. It is now common to see entire busloads of villagers arriving at pilgrimage centers from distant states. So we know that the communication has certainly made the distance less between the believer and the places of worship. The next, after discussing the emergence or increase in pilgrimage in modernity, G.C. Fuller further goes on trying to discuss in detail the major categories of pilgrimage centers. So, according to Fuller, Hindu pilgrimage is traditionally defined as a tirth yatra, a journey which in Hindi is a yatra to a ford or a crossing place. These sacred destinations vary from major river system to holy cities and divine abodes spread across the Indian subcontinent. The destination for these millions of pilgrims can be categorized into several significant groups. One is in terms of the places along the sacred river, because rivers is kind of considered as sacred in Hinduism, and therefore much of the temples or the places of worship are located along the riverside. The Ganga is the primary object of pilgrimage along with other rivers like Godavari, which is in Andhra Pradesh, Kaveri in Tamil Nadu, and they are all viewed as forms of the Ganga. Then we have the 7 holy cities which we have kind of discussed, which is the Banaras, the Haridwar, Ayodhya, Mathura, Kanchipuram, which is the southern Banaras, Ujjain and Dwarka. Then there are 4 divine abodes, which are the Dham. These sites mark the compass points of India, which they kind of creates a map of the India by joining these 4 dots. In north we have the Badrinath in Himalaya, east we have the Puri on the coast, south is Rameshwaram on the coast, and west is the Dwarka. So these are kind of considered as the important categories of pilgrimage center, where if we look into the details of these places, the destination, if we look into Kasi or Banaras, this is the most celebrated crossing place of the river Ganga. Then we have Gaya, which is located in Bihar, considered by many Hindus as a second only to Banaras in importance, and much of the funeral rituals are considered as being taking place against the rivers in Gaya and Banaras, and it is believed in Hinduism that it is kind of a place where you get your ultimate salvations. The third is Prayagraj, which is Allahabad, the confluence of Ganga, which is the It is the meeting point of the three rivers, which is Yamuna, the Saraswati. It hosts the main Kumbh Mela every 12 years, which attracted an estimated 15 million pilgrims in January. And very recently, we had the Kumbh Mela, which had crores of people visiting and taking a dip in the holy Ganga. The fourth is Braj region, which includes Mathura, Gokul, Vrindavan. These are the centers for Krishna's devotees. Vrindavan is unique because it is imagined as a forest rather than a city. Now, these places are all kind of giving us a geographical landscape of the Indian society. And for many Hindus, the ideal pilgrimage involves a complete circumambulation of India. This is achieved by journeying to all four dham sites in an auspicious clockwise direction, though the text knows that this is accomplished by only a few, because the landscape is quite huge, geographically spread out, and it is not kind of desire or possible for every Hindu to have been visited to these four places. So, the landscape of Hindu pilgrimage is remarkably diverse, ranging from the Himalayan peaks to the local village shrine. According to C.J. Fuller, these centers are categorized not just by their physical location, but by the spiritual origin and the geographical reach of their appeal. Pilgrimage centers are often defined by the natural or legendary features that mark them as tirth. So, one of the ways in which we can identify these are also located along the sacred rivers. Then they are also kind of along mountain peaks, that is beyond Mount Kailash. Various Himalayan peaks or lesser hills across India serve as pilgrimage hubs. Then we have specific temples. In many cases, a single temple is the primary destination, such as the Vishnu temple in Badrinath or the Shiva temple in Kedarnath. And if with each of these temples and the deities associated, there is a mythological origin. There are a lot of mythological stories which will help us to understand the origin of these places as the pilgrim site. So, some sites are sanctified by legends. For example, Kedarnath is where Shiva Linga appeared as a fiery column, while Kalighat in Calcutta marks where a part of the goddess Sati's body fell. So, there are kind of different ways in which we understand the location, emergence of these places, and there is a rich mythological text which help us to legends which help us to keep connected to these places. Then there is also geographical and regional appeal, urban versus isolated locations. Centers can be found within major holy cities like the Viswanath temple in Banaras, or in other words minor localities such as the wealthy Venkateshwar temple in Tirupati. Fuller distinguishes between sites based on the scope of their influence. And the first is All India centers. These are sites whose importance is recognized by Hindu throughout the country, even by those unlikely to ever visit them. Then we have the regional centers. These hold primary significance within specific states or linguistic group, such as Ganesha temple in Maharashtra or the Murugan temple in Tamil Nadu. After then we have the third, which is the local centers. These centers possess a merely local appeal and serve smaller immediate communities, and therefore the reach or the pilgrims, number of pilgrims reaching the local centers are comparatively less than the pan-India and the regional centers. So, while scholars and Hindus themselves use various schemes to classify these sites, Fuller notes that a perfectly systematic hierarchy is difficult to achieve. The purpose of the journey often dictates how a site is classified. So, if we look into the typological scheme and motivation, we look into the local type of pilgrimage. The terminology for here, the terminology is being taken from Rajasthan. The term used for local pilgrim is jatra, and the motivation is specifically intended to wangle boons, request favor from the lesser deities. Then the long distance type of pilgrimage, the term is yatra, and the primary motivation is perform intrinsic worthiness. The spiritual results are left in God's hand. The concept of the tirth or the fort operates on two symbolic levels, one relating to the afterlife and the other to the presence of the divine on earth. So, the term Tirth references the mythical, fated river Vitarni that flows between the world of the living and the underworld of the Yam, the god of death. Tradition dictates that after death, soul must cross the river with the assistance of a cow. This crossing is ritualized by mortuary sequence conducted by river banks, ideally the Ganga. So there is a kind of a connect between the living and the dead, and that is the reason that the travels has to be given significance. And positively, this crossing symbolizes liberation from the cycle of rebirth, a goal famously associated with centers like Banaras and Gaya. Beyond death, a tirth serves as a link where the divine and the human world intersect. Pilgrimage sites are locations where deities have appeared on earth and remained pervasively present. For ordinary pilgrims, these sites are proven points on earth when otherwise invisible transcendent deity becomes accessible for an approach. So, when we look into the way in which the pilgrimage are so central, we also need to understand the boons and benefits of pilgrimage. While liberation is the most exalted goal, C.J. Fuller notes that pilgrimage centers offer a wide range of practical and spiritual benefits. A visit, particularly one involving a bath in the sacred water, is said to produce great merit and erase even the most heinous sins. So, we know that the reason why a large number of people go for the dip in the Ganga is the belief in Hinduism that it will wash away the sin. Pilgrimage is also undertaken to secure health and wealth in the current life. The unique legend of each center often details specific boons that a pilgrim can gain by visiting the particular site. And here he explains the boons and the benefits of pilgrimage, referring to the Axis Mundi and Mount Meru. So, he explains that a pilgrimage center is conceptualized as an axis mundi, the central pivot of the cosmos. While these sites are visible on earth, they are believed to exist outside the mundane space and time. Many centers, particularly mountain sites, are identified with the mythical mountain Meru, which rises at the universe center. On Meru's summit sits the city of the gods. The Ganga is said to fall from the heaven directly onto this peak before flowing to the earth. And now, next, he kind of goes into the detailed description of the places of pilgrimage, and the first is in terms of considering the Kasi or the Banaras as the universal center. While many sites claim superiority, Kasi holds a unique status, not through singularity but through its ability to be both an inclusive and replicated. Kasi is said to embody all the tirth, but it also present in numerous other Kasis throughout India. For example, the Meenakshi temple in Madurai contains 3 replicas of Banaras Viswanathan temple. G.C. Fuller notes that because Kasi is everywhere, it can be visited everywhere. A devotee in a local temple can experience the same merit as one in the physical city of Banaras. So, therefore, there is a microcosm and the internal pilgrimage. The logic of pilgrimage center relies heavily on the relationship between the macrocosm, that is the universe, and the microcosm, that is the site of the body. In sacred geography, the universe is often mapped onto a physical site. In Banaras, the pilgrimage route around the city's perimeter is viewed as the circumference of the universe. The center is represented by temples like Madhyameshwar temple or the Lord of the Center or the Manikarnika Ghat. At the cremation ground, the cosmos is believed to be constantly recreated through the sacrifices of the funeral pyres. So, therefore, when we look into the pilgrimage and the way Fuller has described, we look into the body as a temple. Ultimately, any pilgrimage center or temple can be homologized with the human body. A physical journey to a site is likened to a pilgrimage within oneself. An enlightened Hindu may participate in pilgrimage without moving by referring the deity within their own body, conceived of as a temple. In Rajasthan, villagers may treat their 4 local shrines as the 4 compass points of India, eliminating the need to physically circumambulate the entire country. And that is why, that is the kind of the richness of the religion, which offers the different ways in which you can kind of fulfill the belief or kind of participate in the tenets of Hinduism. So basically, when we look into Fuller's book, The Camphor Flame, focusing specifically on chapter 10 on pilgrimage, we see the key takeaway from his analysis is the purpose of his analysis is to gain merit, a full view, a vow, or seek a good death. That is the purpose of a pilgrimage. The experience is not just internal, spiritual, but highly sensory. Smell of incense, noise of crowds, touch of holy water. So, the experience is kind of at multiple level, not just at a ritual and spiritual level. The structure of pilgrimage follows a pattern: separation from the home, the journey, the ritual act, and the return. So, if we look into Turner, who was also talking about the understanding of the transition from the structure to the non-structure, unstructured, or the communitas, here the pilgrimage is helping us to divide between the profane and the sacred. And the last is the social function. Pilgrimage reinforces a sacred geography that makes the entire subcontinent a holy land. So, by reading the chapter 10 on pilgrimage by G.C. Fuller, we will help us understand how pilgrimage being so central tenet of Hinduism. With this, I come to an end of this lecture. Thank you.